Join when they're
Fantastic. All right. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is a momentous occasion in the sense that we are at the stage within our membership of having our first 20 companies that have nominated research officers, which then allows us to run a quarterly research campaign, resulting in quarterly reports and an annual integrated research campaign, specifically looking at trading and issues to do with trading, importantly, within the coating sector as a whole, and then obviously also specifically within your sector. Now, the reality is that we are going to be running parallel activities. The one set of activities will be for those 20 research officers, where we are looking to do development, CPD development of the research officers, to make sure that for each of your quarterly reports, there is meaningful data, not relating to anything to do with your company's trading or competitive situation, but in terms of trends and analysis and trading analysis, trend analysis and trading analysis generally, that can then be combined within the sector into quarterly reports and one annual report to be officially tabled to government. And I'll talk about that in a second. As far as the confidentiality is concerned, SAPMA plays absolutely no role in anything to do with managing your information or managing your quarterly submissions, or in fact, even the annual integrated report for the sector. In actual fact, it is done under a non-disclosure agreement, and that's where Mike and his people come in, and that will be addressed by Lynette, I think. But essentially, SAPMA is completely separate from the activity of analyzing data and of ensuring that that data has nothing to do with your company, but has to do with the aggregated effect of your data plus the other 19 companies on the trends and the trading history of the last quarter and of the year in the annual integrated report that we wish to report on. Now, why is this so important? It is important because in September, although we think it will be delayed until next year, but the Department of Employment and Labor did previously announce that they will be doing compliance certification of businesses by September. But like I say, I think it's likely to be delayed till at least January or February next year. And for those compliance audits, they will want to make sure that you are participating in either individually sending information through to data collection points within government, or alternatively working on a group scheme such as the one SAPMA has initiated, and are participating in the group scheme where your company is identified and your research officer is identified. So what we have to do as SAPMA is to submit back to the Department of Employment and Labor and the Department of Trade and Industry an indicator of which companies are participating in our group scheme and who the research officers are. And then on an annual basis, not on a quarterly basis, but on an annual basis, we will submit the annual aggregated result of the quarterly reviews that we've conducted on trends and trading within the sector to the department, and that will then be compliance from your perspective for participating in the submission of information and the submission of data. I do want to say this, that the results of both the quarterly and the annual report will be embargoed and only disseminated to participating companies by SAPMA, and SAPMA will be signing a separate agreement with your company to that effect, that the result of the quarterly report and the annual report will only be made available in the commercial space to the companies participating, to the research officers participating, and then obviously the annual integrated report will only be made available to the Departments of Labor, the Department of Statistics, and the Department of Trade and Industry. So the reality is that only the companies participating will have access to the aggregated data and the benefit of the aggregated data. Now, we know that initially that aggregated data is going to have only a limited appeal to you and your businesses as you map yourself against, let's call it, sectoral trends and sectoral statistics. But we believe that by the second year, in other words, by the time we get into the second year of quarterly reports, we will have sufficient and good information for you to be able to take meaningful insight from the annual report and the quarterly report to be able to do your work and plan what you're going to do on a trends and on a trading basis based on the information which is contained in the reports which are generated. Before I hand over to Lynette, I just want to know generally your observations and your questions in relation to the information that has already been disseminated, any general comments that anybody wants to make in this regard.
Sorry, can I just say something?
Yes, Mike.
From our side? Okay, we are members of the South African Market Research and SAPMA, which is the European Society of Market Research as well. And part of our ethos, or part of the protocol, is that we're not allowed to let any information out. So whatever, and we've signed NDAs in any event, so whatever we are given, it stays with us, and it is only used in the putting together of reports.
Good. And that's what we're saying, that number one, you keep all of the information, and you are subject to penalties yourself. You keep all of that information absolutely privileged between yourself and the submitting company, that you take out any identification information in your reports relating to any company which has submitted any data whatsoever. And we simply deal with the principle of aggregation and averages as you do your statistical analysis.
Absolutely correct. I mean, we do this for the banking industry, we do this in the insurance industry. So I think the members can feel, quite safe. Should any of your members want to question us and go through stuff with us, we're always available.
Fantastic. Look, there might be a requirement in terms of risk management in some of the larger companies for you to sign an official NDA, and I'm sure you'll have no problem in that regard.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good. So Mike, how do you want to handle talking now about specifics?
Okay, I've just, as I said, I've got bronchitis, so Lynette will go through, just specifically the kind of information, but I think this should be more around how we, what we will do now in order to send out the forms that we need filled out, and how we want the information back so we can do the stats on that.
Can we just be very specific about something, Mike? And that is that what we have agreed to is that for the next, well, let's say for the 1 quarter left this year, which we will be simply piloting the machine you've built which will then result in a quarterly report by the end of the year and not an annual report. And then for next year, these will all be manual submissions, but that after next year, in other words, by 2025, they will be automated submissions. In other words, online submissions.
Yeah, we can do it whichever. We can even go online if you want earlier. I mean, we're very comfortable with this.
All right. So we will, let's say, as a very minimum, we will run this year's quarterly report and the first quarterly report of next year, but then hopefully, and I don't want to promise anything, but hopefully by the second quarter report next year will be online.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So Lynette, let's hand over to you. Are you just going to be talking, right?
Lynette?
Let me unmute. There we go. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Can you just pull your screen down a little bit, because at the moment we're seeing your Kefi. There we go. Fantastic.
That's fine. Okay.
I haven't heard that word.
What?
I haven't heard that word for a long time.
Kefi. Yeah.
I think I'm going to put myself off camera at this
No.
stage.
We need you on camera.
Okay.
Right. Go for it.
Okay. All right. So my name's Lynette, and I work with Mike at Catalyst, and we're a small market research company, and we're going to be basically collating and getting the information from you guys, the research officers. So I think what we need to do is decide how we're going to get the data. I'm thinking we should, even though we're going to do a quarterly report, I'm thinking that everyone should submit on a monthly basis. And then we can collate it into the quarter data. Ava, I don't know if that's doable on a monthly basis.
I think that's the right way to go, because it then takes off the pressure from everybody.
Getting 3 months data together.
Yeah. So just every month, what we'll do is
design the form.
We'll design the form in the next week or so. We'll go through it with Tara and Ava, and we'll just send it in, and all you need to do is to complete it.
So maybe we can just throw it around, because this is very new to people. So it might be better to do it on a monthly basis in case they have questions and they have queries, but also in case we're missing any fields that we can then simply add on a month-to-month basis and inform the people of the fact that we're adding it on a month-to-month basis. I think it's critically important, maybe, Lynette, before we talk about the types of fields you're going to be asking about, can we talk a little bit about the profile of the research officer that we aspire to? And when I say aspire to, that eventually we want to be able to say, this is what this person is capable of doing. Because it's not just an administrative role, is it?
No, I think it's okay. So we need someone who is accurate, someone who is, what's the word? Yeah, accurate and fastidious about giving the right data into the fields. And basically, I think also just being committed to sending through to us every month. That's going to be the biggest issue, is to get, and we're going to have to set a deadline so that by the 30th of the month, we have everyone's feedback, that they can email it through to me, and then I will be responsible for putting it all together and collating it and giving you the trends. I think it's also good on a monthly basis, because there might be months where there's anomalies, which you won't see maybe in the quarterly data, because it'll be averaged out. So if we get, like say, I don't know the industry that well, but say there's December has a spike, then we can actually point out that in which month there was changes in the data. So yeah, I think it's basically maybe what we can do at the end of month 1. Are we going to start this for the end of September?
So we will start it for the end of September.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lynette, we'll start it for the end of September, but can I just say this? I think it's going to be more practical if we set the deadline for submission by the 5th of the following month, only because of how the finance departments work, the marketing departments work, and the trade departments work in some of the larger companies. Right. I would imagine the 5th of the following month would be better than the 30th of the last day of each particular month.
No, you're absolutely right. So if we set it for the following month, so by like say the 5th of October, and maybe for the first month, everyone submits, and I then look through it, and we maybe have a Zoom and just see that everyone's on track and everyone knows what we require.
I think that's fantastic. So what we're really saying is then that for argument's sake, by the 15th of the month, you will then have the opportunity to have aggregated all of the data and information. We have a Zoom. We talk about how you draw your trends from that information. We talk possibly about how people have misinterpreted some of the fields, if that's the case. And we use that as a training opportunity. I just want to say Dion Kruger has raised his hands. So Dion, would you like to take the floor?
Yeah, but just a suggestion.
Let's see your face, Dion. Kan ons jou gesig sien?
I'm so sorry about that.
The one rule is we want to see who we're talking to. Okay, yes, how's it, man?
Good on yourself. May I suggest that it should be the 5th business day of the next month?
Yes.
That's fine. Can you live with that, Lynette?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
I think what I'll do is maybe what I do is everyone's email address, if I could get that, of all the research officers, and then I send through a schedule of where I need stuff by. So 5th day happens to be the Monday, the 7th of that month, then that's when your submission must be in.
Fantastic.
So
And
maybe
Kate,
I could
thank
do a
you for
little
that.
roster till the end of the year.
Fantastic. Kate has seconded the notion that it should be 5 working days, which is absolutely correct. So that is a stipulated requirement. 5 working days after the end of the month is by when you must have submitted. Now, the question is, do they submit directly to you, or will you have a dedicated email for submission, or directly to yourself, Lynette?
What I can do is I've got a research email, which is for basically all our sort of like generic sort of.
I think if I can suggest this, from an audit trail perspective, it may be better to have a dedicated SAPMA research at whatever it is.
We can do that.
Email set up, so we can always trace submissions, because one of the things we're going to have to do is we have to account to the Department of Trade and Industry, not labor for this purpose, but we have to account that whatever the submission requirements are, that there's at least, I think they said initially 60, but aspiring to 80% submissions from a company that wants to be ticked off as compliant in terms of research submissions. So it would be far easier for us to be able to just track the fact that from your point of view, not from SAPMA's point of view, and simply get a report to SAPMA that of the 20, these guys have submitted this month. Of these 20, these guys have submitted this month. That allows Tara then on her side to compile the necessary submissions to trade and industry for that purpose.
Cool. So I'll create a email address. It'll be satma@catalystresearch.co.za, but I'll send that through to everyone. So I'll get onto that. And if Tara can just send me everyone's email addresses. And then we're going to have to design the form. Now, the fields for the form, I'm going to need help on that front.
No, can I just ask a question, Ivor?
Sure.
I mean, work that we've done in the paint industry before, there's a zillion and one products with different size tins. So, I mean, you can go from a very small tin to huge, big, gigantic ones. Or do you want us to go through each variant of each paint by each size?
So Mike, it's a good question. And I think we should throw that to the participants themselves, because what we have is the luxury of being able to say, what is the kind of information that we gain from the participants that can help you in your businesses in terms of understanding the current risks and medium and short-term opportunities from the information we can gain. In other words, should it be done on a product specified basis? Should it be done on a size basis, or both? So I think there's a certain amount of research that needs to be done from our perspective before those forms are in fact sent out. So Tara, let me ask Tara. Tara, I would imagine that what we need to do is properly question the 20 research officers based on their priorities. And Mike, maybe you can guide us in the kinds of questions we need to ask our research officers so that you can create the field document, the field submission document that makes sense for them.
You see, okay, I was thinking aloud in terms of the size. Let's call it the size of the tin, or So if you've got a XYZ at 5 liters and XYZ at 10 liters and XYZ at 25 liters, we can actually pick up trends to see which tins or which sizes are selling at which points. Now, if we want the trend analysis to go into that kind of detail, which is great. I mean, it's for us, it's a little bit of work up front, but once it's set up, it's automated. And
so
then
I just want to hand over, just in that regard, we've got the previous chairperson, and that's Mr. Aguirreos.
Just
Hello,
call me
Mr.
Aggie, that's
Aguirreos.
fine. Yeah, just call me Aggie, that's fine.
Mr.
You know,
Aguirreos, you have a
I
comment
think,
to make.
yeah, I've got a comment to make. Yeah, look, I think in the beginning we should just look at total literage of each product or each category of product, because some guys might call something super acrylic, and other guys will call it general purpose or whatever it is, and therefore we've got to define our products that we're selling. And if we start splitting it into liters and half liters and 20-liter cans and so on, it's going to be very difficult for some of us to actually provide you with that kind of information. I think we've got to look at general terms in the beginning, like we were doing in the past, and then after that we can sort of bring it to more sort of more detailed, you know, whatever you need.
Aggie, can I just ask you? Can I just ask you? You were involved the previous time. Were you involved in the review that Mike is referring to?
Well, I don't know what his review is. You know, what I'm saying here is what we used to do is give each category would have, let's just say it would be acrylics, and then it would be water-based acrylics, it would be enamels and so on. I can send you a list of that.
It would be great if you could send us a list.
That. And we've got,
so Aggie, can we say
what
this?
we used to do years ago and what we were doing quite recently are two different
all right. Can we do
forms.
this? Can we do this? Can we get from you what you're suggesting in writing so that we can put it into some kind of a document? And then, Mike, would it be possible for us to get from you and also utilize it for the same purpose, the previous report you prepared and you worked on, so that what we're able to do is then circulate both of those documents, what Aggie's referring to and what is actually in the most recent report, to the 20 research officers to ask them for their views on what we're asking, number one, and more importantly, what else we should be asking, because possibly there are more recent trends and trading information which may be required by those 20 companies. And that way we will have the two. We'll have your view, Aggie. We'll have the view of the actual last research activity that Mike conducted. And then we will have some, let's call it more recent input from the 20 research officers based on them going into their companies and asking what is the information we could most usefully use. And then we can put it together as a final set of fields to be asking questions around. Mike, I don't know how that sounds to you.
Yeah, we didn't really do any major reports either, because nobody, there's a hell of a sorry, people didn't really supply us a hell of a lot of information.
Mike, what we have got is a
Excel
design
yeah.
That's fine. That's all we need.
Yeah.
So we'll take that. We'll take what Aggie's referring to, just in terms of the categories he spoke about. We'll prepare, if you want, a questionnaire back to those 20 research managers to say, or officers to say, please look at this. This is what we're thinking about. What else would you recommend we ask questions about so that we can aggregate it? And if we can do that, let's say we get something out for argument's sake by next Wednesday, which is, I think, the 16th, and we give guys a week to come back to us. That still gives us enough time to send out a questionnaire by the 1st of September that then only needs to be submitted back to us by, let's say, the 5th working day in October. That gives us enough time to develop properly the questions and the fields we want to be asking questions around. And like I've said, I think that the first couple of quarters is going to be an art, not a science, but we want to get it to the point of it becoming a science. So I want to ask...
Can I just add something quickly? You know, the problem was we tried to get more out of our members and more information out of our members. And then they all came back and they said, well, not all of them, but a big majority of the people said they can't supply all that information. That's why I think we've got to be very careful how we actually design these forms and that the guys are actually able to answer those questions.
Right.
So I think let's just have a look at the basic forms first, and we can have a look at that and play around with those forms. And then after that, we can decide on what kind of information we should actually get in general from the guys.
So Aggie, you will submit to Tara what you're suggesting. As you said, you'll just write it up. We'll get the Excel spreadsheet from Lynette. We'll put together a questionnaire to our members. We'll get the response back from the members, and we'll start the process that way. I'm completely with you 100% that if we ask questions which are too strategically specific in companies, that we're not going to get the right kinds of answers. Lynette, I want to ask you, how does aggregation work?
Okay, so, yeah.
Okay, the way we do, so let me take an example of a client of ours that we do this for all the time. And Lynette can talk to her clients. I'll talk about Gautrain. So we monitor service on the Gautrain every day. We're actually on the train on a daily basis. What we do is that we produce statistics every month, and then we just roll it up. We add month on month on month until 3 months is a quarter, 6 months is a half year, and so on and so forth. And that's just aggregation, basically.
That's one company. So the real question is how you would aggregate amongst 20 companies.
So this is, I mean, we can produce an aggregated report for 20 companies, or we can produce an aggregated report, aggregated for 20 companies all the time, one report, which would go to the government.
So we would be looking for an aggregated, integrated report every quarter, and then one national annual one, or one annual one that would then be going through to government. So we wouldn't be submitting the quarterly reports to government, just the reports to government of which companies have submitted their quarterly information. And then annually, we'd be submitting to government the annual aggregated integrated report.
Yeah.
So my question is this: you get 20 companies, and they're all giving you the same fields, information on the same fields back. Is it as simple as simply combining and dividing by 20, or is there a more sophisticated strategy involved?
No, I think it doesn't need to
divide by 20, I think.
No, we don't need to have it complicated.
Well, you see, again, it depends, like, whether, I'm just trying to think of an example. Like, one person might say they've got 1 ton out of 5 sold. I'm just using rubbish figures now, which is 20%, but somebody else is doing, I don't know, 20 out of 2,000, and it's also 20%. So it's whatever. So it depends whether we're going to work on taking size of company into account. I mean, that can also be worked out for the, but I don't think, I'm not sure we need to do that.
I think once we've got an idea of the fields, and I talk now from a statistics perspective, once we've got an idea of the fields, we will then most probably be able to aggregate on the basis of company size.
Well, that's what I mean, yeah. By volume of company size.
Exactly. And then referring to percentages rather than actual numbers.
Correct.
And that's a good way of aggregating, I think, at the end of the day. When it comes to trends analysis, which are really qualitative questioning rather than quantitative questioning, what is it that the research officers should be aware of in terms of answering qualitative questions as opposed to quantitative questions? Because there's a lot more discretion, there's a lot more individualization, and there's a lot more interpretation involved in qualitative questioning. So let's say we have trend analysis built into our questionnaire, as we will. We're looking at a trend analysis as well as trade analysis. As far as trend analysis is concerned, which is where I think a lot more of the deeper, richer information sometimes will come, what is it that research officers need to be aware of? Or rather, do you have a guideline that down the line we can distribute to the research officers so that they can be aware of the patterns of answering?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Okay, good. All right,
mean by
that's fair enough.
qualitative exactly?
Sorry.
What do you mean by qualitative exactly?
So when one talks about wanting to identify key trends and aberrations in trends that are not only statistically relating to turnover or trading, but rather to general practices. And we do want at some stage to test for general practices, either in how we make or how we sell or how we stock product, etc., in terms of trends in the industry and across the various silos in the industry. I think we're going to have to make sure that our research officers become more and more sophisticated in how they manage qualitative answers to qualitative questions, as opposed to simply giving us numbers.
We can, I mean, what we can in fact do is to simply put a question, how did you, where do you think the market is going? Or I'm using a dumb example, but that we can do quite easily. But the trend analysis we'll do mostly statistically from using regression analysis.
All right.
So we'll do a lot of regressions. We need to look at things like in time, and that's another discussion that we need to have. We need to look at leading series indicators like things like I'm thinking disposable income, housing sales, that kind of stuff. See where the correlations lie. So
Mike, would it be look, we're not going to have this thing right for the next 18 months as we progress towards the definitive questionnaire. But would you be able to indicate the kind of qualitative trends that we could focus on as a part of this quarterly survey? And then we will focus with our members as well on the kinds of trends they would like to have information about.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think, you know what, for this quarterly report that we're going to do in ending January. So, I mean, somewhere around there.
Yes.
Why don't we just do the pure stats? And then starting next year, we can start bringing in the qualitative.
The trend analysis.
Yeah,
and trending's going to happen every month.
Nick, we can even do we can even do something else. Once we've got the stats out of the first quarter, we can show all the research people those stats and ask them why do they think these movements happened.
Sure, we can have like little after the first quarter.
Can add another thing here is that not everyone manufactures all the ranges of products.
Yeah.
So as an example, some of the guys do automotive paints, and then a lot of the other guys don't do that.
Yeah.
So where there is, then they're going to have to look at how they actually see the trends of that from the few people that actually manufacture that. So we got to have a look at the way, it'll take time. It's not something that we can do overnight.
No, sure. Absolutely not. But yeah, we'll get it right.
I think let's just do it as a work in progress. We start off with let's start off by getting our first month in, which is going to be
end of September, so beginning of October.
Yeah. So let's see how we go. Let's see what data we get in. Well, we first got to define the fields anyway. Then let's see what data we get in, and we can always have a little workshop sort of 2 or 3 months down the line and see how it's working, what's missing, what's needed. Yeah. Let's see what we're getting out. Are we getting out the kind of outputs that you want? So we can have a whole little workshop, see how we're doing and what's missing, what's needed.
Good.
Yeah.
Let me just say this, and I'm really talking to the companies that are on board. As you can hear, we are at the beginning of building a process. So there are 2 things being serviced here. The one thing we're servicing is the bringing you into a process that can account for your participation in this research program, which will then clear you with the Department of Labor and Department of Trade and Industry. The second thing is we are building a body of knowledge which will be grown on a quarterly basis and then annually reported on, which will be useful for you in your business. And it's going to be critically important that we hear from you as you become more and more sophisticatedly involved in the process. We hear from you about your experiences in taking these quarterly reports back to your management team and getting from them the information. Well, it doesn't really tell us about trends that we really, or these aspects of the trends we'd really like to know more about, or from a statistics point of view, we'd rather find out more about the averages in this particular regard. And so over a period of time, we're building a more and more sophisticated research machine. So please, I'm imploring you to understand that we're at the beginning of a process and we're building from the bottom up. We're not asking an external agency to do all the work for us, because I think, Aggie, that's where you're right. When we're asking an external agency to do all the work for us, people stop playing because they feel it's simply a one-way communication channel. I'm giving you information. I'm not really getting back the information I need to better run my business. And so this is the opportunity we have to make sure that the research we do in our sector only relates to the information you want about trading and about trends which can help you in your businesses, either for you to be able to reference your current activities against, or to have something aspirational based on understanding the trades and the trending information. Okay, so what we
if I can just say another
Yes,
thing, last thing here, I think the big problem that we had in the past is that a lot of guys didn't want to participate because they said, why should they participate when the rest of the guys aren't participating? And we had that complaint from many of the big players as well, because they just couldn't see the benefit. They weren't getting any statistics and they were fed up with the whole thing. It must be about 8 years now that we haven't had any stats. We used to get this in every single quarter or every half year. We used to get some stats. We knew where we were going, and that all of a sudden came to an end.
So there are, in response to your question, Aggie, there are two answers. The first is that the dissemination of the information will be a closed loop only to those companies that are participating in this project. And the second thing is that the companies that are not submitting will have to be targeted as companies that have dropped off of the compliance register, both to the Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Labor. It's that simple.
I agree with what you're saying,
but let's see how it goes. It'll take a little bit of time, but I think we'll get that culture working well. Tion has said, can we have a written format of the type of information to be shared prior to coming in sharing information? Absolutely. So Tion, as I've said to you, our objective is to engage with you before we finalize the questionnaire, both the quantitative and the qualitative elements of the questionnaire. So you're at the start of the process, not the end of the process of development. So thank you for that question. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for participating. And I want to say this, Tara, we will endeavor to make sure that by next Wednesday, there are emails out to every member of the group, in other words, all 20, and those emails will indicate two things. They'll indicate the document that Aggie has agreed he'll prepare for us. They'll indicate the document that Mike has indicated he'll submit as an Excel spreadsheet, and we'll give those members an opportunity over an additional 5 working days or a week, over an additional week to come back to us with recommendations and suggestions, and we'll finalize an initial instrument for collection in the month of September. We'll finalize that prior to the end of August. Tara, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, so I'm fine with that. Also, in that same email, I don't know if it gives you enough time, Lynette, to set up that email address, but then I'll share that email address with the members that are in the discussion as well.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send it through to our IT company, get them to set up the address, and then in fact, then what I'll do is I'll email you from that address and send you the form we've got that was used before.
Fantastic.
Perfect. That's great.
Guys,
Okay,
any
thank
last
you.
comments or questions? We've got Andy saying, thanks for arranging the meeting, Tara and Iva. Pleasure, Andy. That's what SAPMA is. It's of service to its members. Any other questions or comments?
Nothing
What-
from my side. Thank you, Iva.
Okay, Carlin, baie dankie hoor. Okay, guys. So we will then end this meeting and we will be in communication by next Wednesday. Thank you all for taking your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.